Hello and welcome to today's video. This is a really exciting one. So today's video is the February wrap up. February was a great reading month for me. I really don't know how, but somehow I read a lot. So here are all the books I read during February, plus an ebook, so one more than this, which I'm very happy with. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to go through these in pretty much the order I read them. I did read one big 5-book series, so I'm just going to keep that on at the end rather than giving you my ratings for individual books, because I'm not going to be able to talk about each individual book that much. But yeah, I'm really happy with how this month went. I read 13 books this month, which is less than last month, but I read 4,320 pages, which is actually like 120 pages more than last month. So yeah, really excited by that. And I'm also going to work out the averages and going to start keeping a track of like my 2022 average, like monthly books read and pages read. So I'll insert that somewhere here, because I just think that would be fun to look at every single month. Like, obviously I'm going to say what my books read were for the month and what my pages read were, and every month that average is going to fluctuate and it's going to be fun. And I mean, hopefully it'll keep going up and up and up, but I don't know. I've surprisingly got off to a very good year so far in terms of reading, so not keeping my fingers crossed for it to keep going up, but I'm very happy with how it's going so far. But yeah, I don't really think there's much more to say. I haven't really prepared for this video. If you want any more information about any of these books, I do have a weekly reading vlog for every single week. So all of these books will appear in one of those. So yeah, let's just get into it and see what we've read this month. First up, I read Station 11. This was great. I gave this 4.5 stars. It wasn't quite 5 stars for me, but oh my god, this was such a good book. Like, if you haven't read it, read it. Like, it was great. It's one that as I was reading it, I was very happy that I hadn't read it previous to this pandemic or during this pandemic. Like, I've kind of waited till, you know, we can at least really hope that the world's going to start getting better soon. But yeah, it was so good. So essentially we start off in Toronto, meet a few people, and that night, like, a pandemic breaks out. It's taking people, like, within hours of coming into contact with someone, you're ill. Like, and yeah, so we have that. And then we have a timeline 30 years in the future, and we see how the world's looking now. But then characters from both the day we start at and 30 years in the future, some of those characters also have a timeline 10 years in the past from the day that we started at. So we've got like a 40-year span, the like day the pandemic starts up to 30 years later and up to 10 years before, and it's just great. I really loved it. I love seeing all the pieces come together. It was, I don't know if I wouldn't class it as an adventure, but that's how it felt. Like, you felt like you were learning, and at every chapter you got to, like, you learnt more and you started to put a little bit more together of how these people are interlinked and what's going on in the world and how these different viewpoints are coming in from here and here. And there's also a Shakespeare aspect. I'm not like massively into Shakespeare, like, it's cool, but like, I don't know all of the facts. I'm sure there's a few things that like went out of my head, but there's also that aspect as well. If you enjoy Shakespeare, that's like an extra added bonus. But like, also not knowing anything about Shakespeare or nothing past high school, like, I don't think it took anything away from the book not knowing it. So yeah, really enjoyed it. Would 100% recommend. And the audiobook for this one was also really good. The audiobook was available from my library and I listened to it and it was great and I loved it. So yeah, would definitely recommend. And I started off the month on a very good note. Then next up, I read The Book of M. This was good, but I only gave it 3 stars. 3 stars is still a good book. I'm still happy that I read it. I still had a good time reading it. It just didn't, I don't know, I feel like I didn't really connect with this one as much, and this one had a lot of twists and turns in it that were written as if there were meant to be these big twists and turns, and I saw all of them come in. And I feel like if I hadn't have seen them come in, if I hadn't have guessed correctly, it probably would have got a higher mark. But I feel like a lot of the like wow factor relied on like not knowing that, especially towards the end. There's quite a big twist, and the way it was written before I feel like even any real hints were given as to what was going to happen, I'd be like, well, you know, we've read previous chapters. I know a thing. But it means this thing is not going to go this way. I guessed it a lot more correctly than that, but I don't want to give anything away. And yeah, it was a really good book. This one is 2 years ago when the forgetting reached. So essentially the forgetting is people started to lose their shadows and their memories were linked to their shadows. So once you lost your shadow, you could go a few days, a few weeks, a few months. But by that time you'd forget everything. So people were dying from like not understanding that fire would burn you and running into a burning building, not understanding how to eat and starving. And we mainly follow two main characters in here, and it's interesting, but I also this book was great. I don't want to put loads of downers on it, but I also just really didn't like one of the characters, and I was like, you're just a stupid fucking bitch, to be quite honest. I get the feeling that I'm one of the few that feel like that. I didn't see it in any of the reviews, but yeah, I really didn't like one of the main characters, and to be honest I wasn't massively fond of the other one. So yeah, there were so many perspectives that we saw part of in this book, and I was like, reading from this perspective would have been a much more interesting thing to read from. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars, but it's not one I'm ever going to reread. It's not one that I really think about. So yeah, then I read The Thursday Murder Club. I've been waiting to read this for so long. I've had the hold on the audiobook from my library for months, and it eventually came in, so I read it, and it was great. This was also the first book that I read for Polathon, as it was an adventure. I stretched it a little bit, it's fine. But yeah, I'm just going to read the back of this book because honestly that is all I knew going into it, and it was perfect because there were so many surprises, so many like niceties, so much stuff. So yeah. In a peaceful retirement village, 4 unlikely friends meet up once a week to investigate unsolved murders. But when a brutal killing takes place on their very doorstep, the Thursday Murder Club find themselves in the middle of their first live case. Elizabeth, Joyce, Ibrahim and Ron might be pushing 80, but they still have a few tricks up their sleeves. Can our unorthodox but brilliant gang catch the killer before it's too late? It was great. I haven't read anything like it before, but I don't really read a lot of like mystery and like detective-y type books, which this probably falls into. In fact, I think all of 2021 I read one book like that and didn't enjoy it. So yeah, it's very different to anything I've ever read, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm definitely going to pick up the second book in this series. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars. It was great. The characters were great. It made you smile a lot, and I had a great time. I do want to mention that afterwards I did see like a research paper that had been written on this book, essentially exploring the way that it only really, the only real way it wanted to get old, like it allowed people to get old, was in a very able way. And this paper did say how, you know, if you weren't aging gracefully, the representation of that in this book wasn't great, and the things that happened when that happened in this book weren't great, which looking back at I do agree with. Not so much the only way to age was that, but there were a couple of cases where people weren't aging gracefully. I don't really know how else to say it, but like, you know, we're having memory issues or we're in comas or something like that, and the way their storylines were going on, it definitely didn't have the same feel to it as the rest of it. I didn't see it when I was reading it, so it's difficult to objectively talk about, because I gave this 4 stars because I really enjoyed it, but after having read that paper I do understand where it's coming from, so I just think it is something to know. So yeah. Then I read Frostheart. Oh, and this was actually the first one, I think. So I forgot to mention that the Thursday Murder Club was for red cover in my TBR game, but yeah. And then Frostheart was for amazing cover, and this was great. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. It wasn't quite 5-star feels, but I feel like it has potential to get there still. So this is a trilogy. I've only read the first book. The way it's written, I feel like if you read the entire trilogy, then I think there is going to be a chance for at least one of the books, if not a couple of the books, or even for this rating to change and go up to 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I really liked the story. I really liked the characters. I also loved how much illustration there was throughout this book. So yeah, page after page you can definitely just see how much illustration there is in this book, and it was just great. It really added to it, which I've never experienced before. And yeah, I had a great time. This is a really good book, and to be honest, I just want to get on with it and read the rest of the series. I don't own them yet, I need to get them, but it was really good. We follow Ash and his guardian Yeti. Other characters come into play, other forces, and we learn a lot about Ash. Ash learns a lot about himself, and you know, there's a goodie, there's a baddie. It's middle grade, so you do see the baddie coming. As an adult, you can see the baddie coming, but even with seeing that, it was still really cool, and it was still a really good read. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Then I read Northern Lights. I wanted to enjoy this one more than I did. So this was a reread. I read it when I was younger, when I was a child, and I can remember really enjoying it and having a lot of fun with it. And unfortunately, it did not live up to that at all, to be quite honest. Like, I still had a good time. I'm so glad I read it. I gave it 3 stars in the end. I will read the other 2 books. Well, I'll definitely read the next book, but there is it's a trilogy, so you know, hopefully I'll enjoy the next book enough to want to read the final one as well. This was great. It was objectively good. The story, the world building, the characters, the relationships, how everything comes together, it's objectively good. I just remember reading it when I was younger and it having such a magical feel to it, and this world just being so big and vast and so much to explore. But I've read a lot more since then, and it's still a good book. I think I unfortunately hyped it up a bit too much for myself, but yeah, I definitely still recommend it. We basically follow Lyra, who is a child living in Oxford. Is it Oxford? I'm pretty sure it's Oxford. It might be Cambridge, but I'm pretty sure it's Oxford. And she finds out stuff about the world. Children are going missing, and in this world everyone has it's essentially an animal companion. It's a bit more magical and sciencey than that, but essentially you can think of it as an animal companion. It was so interesting and so good, and I really did enjoy it. The next book I think I'm going to really love. I don't want to say this too much, but because now there isn't this massive hype around it, because going into the next book I'm going to be expecting this, I think I'll enjoy it more. I just hyped it up too much, which is a me issue, but yeah. I also read Snotgirl. This is a really interesting graphic novel, comic book. I think it's graphic, yeah. It's a graphic novel. It's volume 1, because there are 5 comics within this. I'm just going to read the back of this, because this went to places I did not expect, and I feel like if I spoke about it, if you do decide to read this, it'd be better to go into it not expecting anything and not knowing anything. So on the back it just says, who is she? Lottie Person is a glamorous fashion blogger living her best life. At least that's what she wants you to think. The truth is, her allergies are out of control. Her friends are terrible people. Her boyfriend traded her up for somebody younger. And she may or may not have killed somebody. It's the first volume of Snotgirl, and things will never be the same. So yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was a very quick read. It took me like an hour maybe to get through the whole thing, and I had fun whilst reading it. So yeah, I'm glad I read it, and I would recommend it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. It wasn't anything special, but I really enjoyed the illustration style in it as well. It's very easy on the eyes, and it's just this kind of setup that I enjoy. So yeah. Then I read The Secret Circle, The Divide. I gave this 4 stars. I love this entire series. There's still 2 books left in it, but I don't own them. So I am now up to date with this series to the books I own. With this one, I found it really cool. We had new characters introduced in very interesting ways, but the new characters introduced, like, one of them might have maybe played a part in this book, but the other characters that were introduced were literally just little tidbits here and there, and they're for future books, and it just did it really well. The magic system is also expanded on in this book, and there seem to be real consequences for things going wrong, which I often find in YA books that aren't. But yeah, there are real consequences, and I just really enjoy this series. I don't think it's anything like super deep, but this is a lot of fun to read, and the characters themselves and the different relationships and how everything works, it's a good time, and yeah, I really like it. Then I also read an ebook called Serenity, and this actually finished last night, so yeah, just in the brink of time. It's the first as I'm filming this, so yeah, I finished it on the last day of the month. It was great. It's a poetry collection, and it was absolutely amazing. It was such a perfect way to finish the month. I gave it 5 stars. The poetry collection itself was split up into 3 sections, and that was acceptance, hope and tranquility. The first section, which was acceptance, I absolutely loved. There's one poem in there that I was it had like a little bit of like religious connotation in it, and that's just not my vibe. I avoid stuff like that. But every other single poem in that section I absolutely loved, and it was like reading someone else's memories but thinking of your own as you're reading them. Perfect, really loved it. The second section, hope, really enjoyed every poem. They're all written really well. They just didn't speak to me as much. And then the third section, which was tranquility, was just really tranquil. Like, some of the poems were simple and pretty, and some of the poems were like deep and hurtful, but they all still had such a tranquil energy to them. It was really good. I had such a good time reading it, and I gave it 5 stars. And yeah, that was that one, and I think that one actually comes out today, I think, so fun times. And then last but not least, this month I reread an entire series, which I'm really happy with. I wasn't expecting to, but these are the Percy Jackson and the Olympians books. We've got book 1, The Lightning Thief, book 2, The Sea of Monsters, book 3, The Titan's Curse, book 4, The Battle of the Labyrinth, and book 5, The Last Olympian. Here they are in all their glory. These were great. They were so much fun. I really enjoyed them. So I gave The Lightning Thief 5 stars. The Sea of Monsters 5 stars, The Titan's Curse 4.5 stars, The Battle of the Labyrinth 4 stars, and The Last Olympian 5 stars. So all of them were between 4 and 5 stars, and they were just a lot of fun. I love the world, I love the story, I love following Percy. I will say, like, I want to continue on with the next series in this, but I know that we only have 1 Percy book in that, the rest are like other Half-Bloods. But yeah, it was a great time. Most people will have read this series like when younger, like I know that's when I first read it, but it was a great reread. Like, I already knew what was going to happen in it, and I was still feeling the emotions and feeling the energy and the like tightness, and yeah, it was a really good time. Obviously book 1, we learn about Percy, we will learn about this new world, and we essentially just follow along from there. I don't have a lot to say about this series, to be honest, because I don't think there's too much to say. I think you should go into it as blind as possible and just read and enjoy. It's great, it's great. We learn about half-bloods, demigods, gods, all these different like Greek mythological creatures and monsters, and oh yeah, it was great. And yeah, that's all. That is all. So those were all of the books that I read in February. Really happy with what I read, really happy with how much I got around to. I didn't finish my official TBR, but I'm just going to ignore it. I still read a lot and I had a good time, and we're just going to pretend. We're just going to pretend. So yeah, I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do give it a like. Subscribe down below if you'd like to see more content like this, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye!